surround you.
Hello and welcome to the Nighthawk Racing F1 RST Season 3 Round 3 Blue Lobby. This week at the historic track, the Temple of Speed, Monza. I'm Midnight and I have the privilege of introducing you to the other Blue Lobby commentator tonight with Kirk Stancer for our Blue Lobby today. So, without delay, let's say hello to Kirk and get this underway. Kirk, hello and welcome.
Hello, Luke. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here tonight for commentating for the Blue Lobby. I'm sure what we'll see is a very exciting round tonight with lots of overtakes and maybe a few spills along the way.
We can only hope. Right, we'll see what our Blue Lobby will give to us today. The last few rounds have been absolutely nail-biting, so without further ado, let's go into the event format. So, as we know, this is a 10-event championship with 20 races overall, 10 sprint and 10 feature race. Tonight is obviously the Blue Lobby. Please feel free to check out the Red Lobby on our Nighthawk Racing YouTube. So we have over 30 drivers registered in this season's event. But the basic overview for the format, we have in round 1 we have a lobby split qualifying, which won't apply today, but we have a roughly 15-minute sprint race for the opener, which tonight will be 10 laps, then a 10-minute qualifying, and then a 36 laps feature race at Monza. So, Kurt, can you give us a bit more information on the exact layout and the specifications for the sessions, please?
Alright, thank you, Luke, for that introduction, Luke. So starting tonight with our sprint race, it will be a 10-lap race with the grid order decided in reverse average points order. It will be a rolling start to help try and avoid any drama in the first few corners. And it will be ×4 tyre wear and ×3 fuel usage. So maybe if you chose the soft tyres, you might be in for a little bit of trouble towards the end, or fuel, if you're a bit too aggressive on the fuel, you could see yourself running out of fuel towards the end of the race. We also have damage only set to limited for the sprint race, just so if anybody does pick up any damage, it doesn't ruin their race completely. After the sprint race, we'll go straight into our qualifying, which is a 10-minute qualifying session. A few caveats to qualifying. So you have to start the feature race on the tyre you set your fastest lap on. So say if you set your fastest lap on the medium tyre, that will be the tyre you start on the sprint race. Unless we have a wet qualifying session, it will be open choice for a dry race feature race start. You'll get points. Well, bonus points are available for the qualifying for the top 3, where you get 3 points for pole, points for second, and then 1 point for third place. I believe that's everything for qualifying. Then after qualifying, we'll go into our main event for the evening, which is the feature race. Quite a few rules for the feature race. So for the feature race, it is a grid start. Be about 36 laps tonight around Monza. I know certainly you can find yourself losing concentration around this place. It's not the easiest, brain engaging place, for a lack of a better term. For the feature race, 36 laps. 3 times tyre wear, 4 times fuel. So hopefully we should see a lot of strategy calls tonight. As we see, we have a grid faults, well, with the fault starts check in place, fuel set to 100%, and then if you did pick up a qualifying ban, which I don't think any of our drivers have done for this round, we will have an open tyre choice to start the race as well.
Quite right, Kurt. Thank you very much. And there's obviously a couple of little rules that they have to follow in the feature race as well, which we're all might be familiar with now. You have to use 2 different compounds of tyres, and you have to start the feature race with the tyre that you qualified on. But it's an interesting system, Kirk, isn't it? And it does catch a few drivers out, but it does lead to some strategically interesting calls, doesn't it?
as we saw a few rounds ago in Austria, where we only got a little dabble of rain, which only just engaged our wet tyre rule, which really opened up the race for some drivers.
Certainly does, absolutely does. Right, we're going to move on to the points now for the Blue Lobby. So there is points to fight for all the way down to 12th in the sprint race, but it's 14 points for a win, 12 for second, 10 for third, and then 1 point off each down to 12 for 1 point. And there is a point extra for the fastest lap in that sprint race. In the feature race itself, there's lots of points up for grabs, so you really want to be finishing the race grabbing as many as you can. And it's 28 points for first place, 25 for second, 22 for third, and then all the way down to 14th place for 1 point, and 2 points again for that fastest lap. And as Kirk said, there are extra points available in qualifying for first, second and third, so there's something to play for in every single session. So lots of fun to be had out there, and well, lots of opportunity is the way I look at it. But as Kirk said, strategically interesting around here. That one factor a lot of drivers do also consider is with that tyre rule for qualifying, you can pick up a couple of extra points, or do you settle in for a larger haul of points for the feature race, go with a slightly longer view on it. But Kirk, I think that takes us on nicely to talking about our drivers that are on the grid today for the sprint race, and seeing what we think they're going to be capable of.
Well, here at Monza tonight, we certainly have a few very memorable corners, such as the Curve de Grande, heading into second chicane and the Lesmos. Obviously, more iconic corners such as the Scari and Parabolica. You can only really describe Monza as a legendary circuit. I'm certain we'll see plenty of overtakes into the first chicane. Obviously, having a long front straight really allows drivers to get in that slipstream and to look up to the inside of turn one. This also goes for Scari. If you get a good exit off Lesmo 2 for rundown to Ascari, you've certainly got a chance to have a look up the inside. And then you've got to say the same for Parabolica as well. If you get a good exit from Ascari, you can always look up to the inside, or try and carry the momentum around the outside of the Parabolica, Luke.
Yeah, quite right. There's lots of opportunity for slipstreaming and for late braking manoeuvres. But one thing is always overlooked around here is the pits itself, where you're coming out and you've got that big dividing line. Can give us some really interesting, if hairy, moments down into turn one. But it's an iconic track around Monza. We all love coming here. Well, I say we all do. It's a love-hate in some respect for this track, but I certainly love coming here, and it does tend to lead to a lot of more unique races as it focuses on more the top speed and the fuel efficiency of some of the engines, and it's more of a thinking kind of track. You have to think your way around the problem, because the tyre wear being so low, you have to make the move yourself or plan ahead. So it's one of those interesting, if a bit more traditional tracks, but hey, we're here, let's enjoy it.
Okay, so leading us off today for our feature race, well, sprint race should I say, but again a little bit eager, we have Piper. In second place we have one of our admin teams and one of my personal favourites to win the sprint race, Ziggy. Third, another member of our admin team, Sarah. Then we have Chris Douglas in fourth, Max Velocity in fifth, and Bertie in sixth. If you want to take it away, the rest of it, Luke.
Fantastic. Yes, we have one of the DSR boys, Sabre Venom, otherwise known as Haslett, in that 911 in P7. Then Lee in a gorgeous 911, bit of a lovely retro livery there. But P8, he's going to be looking forward to making some moves in this race. Then Rippin' to Terran in that gorgeous purple Ford GT. And then we have Deadline, otherwise known as Driftline, if you've seen him in any of our other Season 2 races, in P10 for his first race this season. And new to the grid, we have a Joker. And that is an absolutely gorgeous livery. And good luck to him in his first race of Nighthawk Racing. And then bringing up the back is Stephen, who is unfortunately serving a back of the grid penalty on this one. So he will be looking to move forwards, but he's already had a feature win, sprint win this season rather, and he'll be definitely looking to impress. So good luck to him out there. So Kirk, any thoughts on this upcoming sprint race? You've already highlighted Ziggy as potential victor. So are you going to stick with that one, or are you going to pick out anyone else?
Well, I think on his day, Ziggy's probably one of the fastest drivers I personally know. If he can keep it clean and do a iconic Ziggy grass cutting, I think he is my favourite driver to win the race. But it'll be also very interesting to see what Joker can pull off. Obviously, we've never seen him race before in this league, but I believe I've ever personally raced against him, so I'm certainly eager to see what he can also do. Obviously, being a new face to the league.
Do you know what that is? That is a great insight. Yeah, we're going to watch out for Joker. Ziggy, as we know him, is a high-speed gardener, but I'm going to be keeping an eye out for a couple of people. I think Joker, obviously, deadline, he has had multiple wins in the L2 lobby last season, so he'll be one to absolutely watch. Ripon Deterrent is just looking for a good result. He's been so close so often, yeah, even this season, so keep an eye out for him. And yeah, Ziggy and our very own Sarah Hawkey, so keep an eye on this one. I know she likes Monza and going to be wanting and having a sniff at that podium, I feel. So Kirk, without delay, shall we go and see how the drivers get on in our 10-lap sprint race here in the blue lobby at Monza?
Absolutely, Luke. I'm ready and eager to get this thing started. Alright, leading us away tonight for our sprint race is Piper, followed by Z and Sarah. It'll be interesting to see if anybody can make any moves, maybe not into turn 1 as it's a rolling start, but especially looking towards turn 3 and 4 in that second chicane. So we see Big Douglas getting a very good run on Sarah into the first corner, maybe looking up the inside straight away, making a move early on into this first lap. As we see him going 3 and 4 wide back there with a lot of drama kicking off, and see Sarah. Oh, Sarah getting maybe a little bit elbows out there with Douglas and causing him to spin out.
Yeah, Douglas round.
Behind.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but here we go again. Here we go, down to the next chicane curve.
As we see Ripper, Ziggy and Sarah as our top 3 looking in towards back. We see Ripper trying to make a move on Haslett Flash Saber Venom. That move getting done as we see probably a little bit more dramas. Yellow flags are out there for a split second, but everybody else seems to be going through one by one as we see Max Velocity going very deep into the first Lesmo and heading into the second one. He seems to be holding up Piper quite a bit. Can Piper get a better run at the second Lesmo and running down towards Ascari? It looks like maybe that yellow flag was from Piper, obviously losing 3 places from leading, but losing from to Max, Sarah and Ziggy heading into Ascari. Can they make the move stick? Break later than Max, but they outbreak themselves, and we see both. Well, both.
I'm not sure there, Kurt.
I'm
not sure, Kurt. That might have been contact.
Yeah, it certainly looked like it for a second.
Oh!
There. Obviously.
Incident at the back. Bertie is in the wall coming out of Ascari. Again, I don't know if that was contact, but down the back straight, Bertie with big damage. But unfortunately, he's lucky here. That will repair, but he's down to P11. So that is really ruined his race. Kurt, interesting first lap.
Absolutely. Before I got myself all tongue-tied, it looked like going into Ascari, Piper outbroke themselves, which led to a little bit of contact with Max Velocity, and then it caused chaos further behind. As we see at the front there, Lee up to third, making it into the podium position with quite a simple move there on Max Velocity.
Yeah, he did well. I mean, it's a nice, simple, late braking manoeuvre down into turn 1. But Max Velocity coming back at him slightly, but thinking better of it. No, they're still going at it into the second chicane. So, side by side. Max goes for the move, does get through, but lights up the rear tyres and invites, I think there's Deadline up from the back of the grid into P3. So lots of change of position there. Where's Deadline come from? He's absolutely come out of nowhere. He's going to make Mac very happy with that one.
Yeah, he's had an absolute stormer of a first 1.5 laps into this race. It looked maybe a little bit robuster for ending there from Lee, as it looked like he kind of closed the apex there of Max velocity. As we see Lee and Max getting into more trouble heading up into a scorry. Lee outbrakes himself ever so slightly. There's more contact between the two drivers.
Oh!
And he sees Lee go off and run wide into the barrier loop.
Yeah, that came to tears, both side by side, down the back straight, into a sky, side by side, all the way round. Neither of them wanted to give each other space. It's one of those, I would imagine Max probably would regret not getting out of it. Oh, and another incident into Parabolica involving Max velocity. It looks like, going back to the previous incident, I think both drivers should have probably thought a little bit better of that, and they've Lee's ended up, unfortunately, in the gravel. That's not great for him, but hopefully he can make a good recovery later on. And Max Velocity is going to have to try and keep the rest of this race nice and clean.
Absolutely, Max Velocity getting into quite a few incidents early on in this race. So we see ripping the Terran out, breaking himself into turn 1, causing the entire pack to back up into the second corner. He ended up losing a place to Joko again. Another driver who's got off very well into this race, obviously starting in P11 up into P4, and ripping the Terran make a move coming up into the second chicane. He looks towards the inside, he brakes about the 130 metre mark. Joker outbrakes him, but due to Ripper Terran maybe braking a little bit earlier, allowed Max Velocity to do an absolutely beautiful move around the outside loop.
Yeah, beautiful bit of racing, and now we're starting to settle down a little bit. The sprint race is really coming alive with these group of 5 drivers. But out front at the moment, Ziggy, he's gone. He's down the back straight. He's got a clear 3 or 4 seconds on Sarah Hawkey, but he's closely followed by Deadline. And the pack coming up: Joker, Max Velocity, Haslett or Saber Venom as we know him, Rippentatarian and Steven all in a row there, coming through Ascari. Steven carrying a 1.5 second penalty. I can only imagine he's cut probably one or both the chicanes on the opening part of this lap, and that's going to bite him now with that time penalty. But Bertie making his way back through the field a little bit, up to P9 now, with Lee, who had a incident last lap, into P10. Chris Douglas and Piper going at it, fighting over 11th at the moment and the final couple of points. So lots of action everywhere we look.
Absolutely. I think our main battle right at the moment is for the battle for P4, with Joker leading this little train of cars, with Max Velocity in 5th, Saber Venom or Haslett in 6th, and Ripping the Terran in P7. Really much to between them as we go into lap 4, Luke.
Oh, Joker wide, deep into turn 1, and he's lost a lot of time coming out of the first corner. Steven has also done something similar. He's ended up in the gravel, but he's got away with it. So yeah, it was Joker who went deep into turn 1, then got a little bit of a push from Max Velocity coming out of turn 1. So it's lots going on between this lot. Lots of swapping of paint today.
Absolutely. See Max Velocity successfully defended into a second chicane from Ripping Terran, who has managed to pick himself up a half-second penalty. And someone who has also picked up a penalty is Saber Venom, Luke. As we see him go round almost go round on the exit of the second Lesmo and strike the wall, causing a bit of damage to the front right of his Porsche. Yeah,
that is not what he would have wanted to have done. But hopefully it means we can take a breath. I don't think we've had a chance to breathe since the opening lap. Ziggy, though, out front at the moment, our very own Bila Dorada, one of our admin, leading the sprint race, taking full advantage of that P2 start, followed by Sarah Hawkey, our co-founder for this championship, being harassed by Deadline or Driftline as we know him. If you know, you know. And he's got a gorgeous livery on that AMG. But settling down now, Joker up from the back of the grid to P4, Max Velocity P5, Ripper Deterrent P6, Haslett Saber Venom, recovering from that moment at a Lesmo 2. And now we have another battle between Bertie and Stephen, these two always end up in the same bit of track together.
As Sarah goes deep into turn 1, is this going to be Deadline's chance to overtake? Sarah getting all squiggly on the exit, which allows Deadline, who has the much better traction on the exit of the corner, to simply sweep around the outside of her. Sarah back into the slipstream of the Mercedes and challenge him into into the second chicane. It looks like Sarah maybe just a little bit too far back to mount a challenge at this time round. And she goes maybe a little bit too deep into the second chicane, and Deadline's more or less disappeared now, Luke.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's over yet. She's going to have to keep an eye on behind her, at the very least. The podium's still on, but Joker there in that 458 is bringing max velocity in the McLaren with him, followed by Rip into Terran. So, yeah, Sarah's going to have to get a shifty on after that half-second penalty, but good little bit of racing there. Deadline seizing the opportunity and grabbing P2.
Absolutely, very opportunistic driving from Deadline. Took full advantage from a very slight mistake from Sarah. Obviously, Sarah now with the half-second penalty is probably going to fall into the clutches of the chasing drivers of Joker and Max Velocity, as you said. As we go on board with Joker looking into Parabolica, is he going to make a move or think better of it? He thinks better of it for now. He's going to look to get the much better exit on the exit of the corner to get into that slipstream of Sarah and look to challenge possibly into turn 1. If Sarah outbreaks herself again into turn 1, could lose a second position in 2 laps. As we see, Joker is all tucked up behind Sarah, possibly waiting for now, as he maybe brakes a little bit later than Sarah, but not quite late enough to really mount a challenge into the first chicane. And he maximised the exit of turn 2, which he does. Sarah again dropping a wheel into the gravel, which really compromised their exit. Again allows Joker to go simply around the outside of her. A second 2 laps, 2 positions lost for Sarah Hawkey.
I think it happens occasionally, but yeah, Sarah dipping a wheel onto the grass, and she's done it again, coming into the second chicane, and unfortunately that's ended up in a little bit of a tangle. That is not what she would have wanted, but at least all 4 wheels still on the car and pointed the right direction. So Sarah down from P2 to P6 in a couple of laps, but at this point you have to calm yourself down and focus on what's going on ahead of you. But Max Velocity is going to focus on what's behind him in this case with Joker as he tangle a little bit down the back straight there, swapping more paint. That 458 and McLaren are getting to know each other intimately in this race.
Be a little bit of a naughty, a little bit of a squeeze into the entry of Ascari. Max Velocity really wanting to keep that P3, as we see behind, ripping the tearing, getting the exit all sorts of wrong, going wide into the gravel and catching the grass the other side, and dropping himself down to P7 with some pretty severe damage in the front there. Going on back on board for this battle for 3rd position between Joker and Max Velocity. Can Joker mount an attack heading into the first chicane? Looks like although in the slipstream, he's probably not catching that McLaren as fast as we would like, Luke.
I would agree on that. Neither of the cars are particularly quick in a straight line around here, but it's all relative. And it does look like that 458 was struggling on the top end there to get in on the back of the 650S. So maybe Max can hold on to that position for longer than when we thought. But it's also now a factor for the tyre wear on that 458. Getting out of these high traction zones is going to become a problem. Those Ferraris do shred rear tyres, and as you can see, Joker's tyres are starting to go off, so he's going to have to start thinking about Sarah behind him, who's got much better tyres.
Yeah, I'm just saying, on the exit of the second chicane, Max Velocity dropping a tyre into the gravel, which allows Joker to look up the inside. Again, Max Velocity aggressive on the defending, hitting the first Lesmo. Certainly seems like a bit of an aggressive driver. He's now tucked up behind that Ferrari, heading into Ascari. Can he possibly look at making a move? It's going to be close enough. The Joker leaving that Ferrari right in the centre of the track. Max Velocity looks to go around the outside. He gets a wheel on the grass. He makes a little bit of contact with Joker, and he's hit the wall loop. That is obviously not what he would like to do. or trying to make a move, but it also now promotes Sarah, who would drop down to P6, come to P4, Luke.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If you want a good result around here, you're going to have a clean race, because it's being a traditional track. There's nothing but grass, gravel traps, and barriers around here. So unfortunately, Max Lossi falling victim to that. And Sarah's pushing a little bit of luck there with the AstroTurf, same as Haslett. But yeah, to win and get big points around there, you have to try and have a clean race. And first to finish first, you have to finish. And somewhere out front, Ziggy has been passed by Deadline, I think, down the main straight. So Ziggy down to P2. Deadline assumes the lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back, it looks like Ziggy made a slight rewind me. It looks like Ziggy made a bit of an incident into the first corner. It looked like on the entry to the first corner, he dropped a wheel onto the grass and had a bit of a spin, and then got reset, which allowed Deadline to sneak around the outside of him, Luke.
Yes, and I think there has been an incident between Bertie and Stephen as well. I think Stephen has let Bertie through to avoid any steward inquisition there. So that, to me, looks like a good bit of sporting behaviour, but without seeing the rest of it, it's a little bit of guesswork on that one. But still, loads of other battles going through here, and but going back to the Ziggy Deadline pass, I can only agree with you. I think Ziggy either made an error coming out of Parabolica or into the first corner, but without looking at it directly, we don't know. But still, loads of battles to come, and Ripon Deterrent recovering from that half spin earlier on, and Max Velocity recovering from the Ascari incident they had last lap, battling for P7.
On board with Ripon Deterrent at McLaren, it looks like a pretty handy in a straight line, as Ripon Deterrent's not really gaining that much. Maybe gaining a little bit now, but I still think he may be just a little bit too far behind to really make a challenge on that McLaren.
Wow. As you said that, Kirk, I think Max Rossi either served a penalty or let Ripon Deterrent go, because Ripon is ahead again, so up to P7, and now after Lee, who's recovered to P6.
Well, we see this race hasn't been going the greatest for Max Velocity. Obviously, we've seen him get quite aggressive when it comes to defending and overtaking, and obviously putting a few wheels on the grass here and there. Obviously, it's really cost him quite a lot as this race has progressed, because we see Sarah running very wide in the exit at turn 2, which allows Haslett to sneak through up her inside. That promotes Haslett up into P4, and Sarah gets demoted down into P5, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's going to be a annoying point loss, but at the end of the day, I was keeping an eye on what's coming out front. Ziggy is closing down Deadline. I have a slight suspicion Deadline might have used too much fuel. Ziggy has a lot more fuel than Deadline, and we've got one more lap after this, so still things to fight for out front. Absolutely.
This race, it was like anybody could win this race at this precise moment, Luke. Certainly seems like it. Obviously heading on to the final lap soon. It certainly seems like the ball could be in Ziggy's favour, as we see Ziggy make a slight mistake on the exit of Ascari, which maybe we might have just given this race win to a Deadline.
Yeah.
Or a drift line, as you said earlier. Yeah. If you know, you know.
And unfortunately, that's going to definitely restrict his point score. Maybe losing the win, but it's going to put Joker on his back and make P2 a little bit more unlikely. And I've also just been seeing we've had Haslett, he's dropped down the field a little bit as well. So there's lots of movement in here. Haslett is down to P8.
Yeah. Who said we can't have more than one overtake a lap on this place? It certainly, even after 10 laps, the grid certainly seems like they're enjoying to jumble themselves up just a little bit.
Yeah, but one thing we have to say, Deadline and Joker from the back of the grid to P1 and P3 at the moment. Sarah Hawkey enjoying P4 at the moment. Just going to have a nice clean final lap of the sprint. Lee up to 5th, Ripon Deterrent up to 6th, Max Velocity. I think it's been in every position of this grid twice in this sprint race, so just needs to get to the end and get the book those solid points. Haslett is going to be kicking himself for that spin last lap.
Absolutely, it's never what you want to do as a driver, or want to see as a commentator for that matter. You can only you can almost feel the frustration through his car. He picked up a half-second penalty somewhere for Haslett. Not the ends of the race that he would have liked. Now here we are. We see it running down to the parabolica on the final lap of the race. It looks like Joker is closing that gap to Ziggy. Can he possibly look to make a move? He may be just a little bit too far back. It doesn't matter. If you can get a good exit here, you can certainly get that P2 away from Ziggy. It looks like Ziggy might just be able to hold on as Joker, it's right in behind the slipstream. It looks like Ziggy's going to hold P2, and Ziggy does hold P2 with Joker taking the final podium position. Sarah Hawkey driving a very, very solid race to finish P4. Although she made a slight few mistakes, she certainly did not ruin her race enough to ruin the P4 finish. Then we have Lee just defending from ripping the Terran and max velocity on the final lap of the race. Haslett taking P8, Bertie taking P9, Piper 10th. Possibly ran out of fuel there, maybe a little bit towards the end there. Stephen only just missing out on Piper's P10, and Craig Douglas taking out our final 12th position, Luke.
Well, that was a hectic one, if I don't mind me saying. But
very, very hectic.
Do you know what? There was so much going on that was impossible to follow. All of our Blue Lobby drivers giving us action no end in that one, and a lot of them doing themselves absolutely proud. But just to give us the rundown very quickly. Deadline P1, Ziggy P2, followed by our new boy Joker in P3, Sarah Hawkey P4, Lee recovering to P5, Rippon to Terran P6, then followed by Max Velocity, Haslett, Bertie, Piper, and then I believe it was Stephen, Chris Douglas just off the back there. So, wow, that was interesting. Any particular highlights to you?
I think probably anything when it comes to max velocity. He either seemed to be defending hard or attacking hard. Maybe made a few mistakes during that race. It was certainly very interesting to be on board his car, Luke.
Quite right. But as always, there are two sides to every story in this one. And for one person that could have got out the corner, so could the other one. But that is one for the stewards, and that is not something we have to worry about here. That will be dealt with after this event. But more than anything, that does lead us into our next session, which will be qualifying for the feature race. Again, qualifying, as Kirk said earlier on, is 10 minutes. So let's jump ahead, have a quick look at the pole lap, and discuss qualifying results before we get into the feature. Kirk, let's move on.
What a lap from Max Velocity, managing to stick it on pole, like only by 35 thousandths of a second compared to Rippon the Terran. In Rippon the Terran, we have Line. He is only 1.2 tenths off pole. Fourth place, we have Ziggy. We have Joker in P5, a very impressive qualifying show from him on his debut. Doing that, we have Sarah in P6. Then we have Craig Douglas looking to bounce back from maybe not the greatest of sprint races, qualifying in 7th. And we have Lee in P8, with Bertie, Stephen, and Saber Venom or Haslett. Saber Venom or Haslett taking rounders out the back of the pack. Interestingly enough, Luke, it looks like Saber Venom did not set a lap time, therefore he has an open choice of tyre to start this race on.
I believe Saber Venom Haslett, as we know him, did have some technical issues with lobby admission, so he's unfortunately starting at the back, but I will give him full and free tyre choice for the race. So small little mercy, but he would have liked to have not ideally been starting on the final row. But yeah, Kirk, that was a cracking lap by Max. Hopefully he can capitalise on that, but he's going to have some fast drives behind him, particularly in Rippon to Terran and Deadline. So I think we should get into the race and then have some fun here. What do you think?
Absolutely. I just wanted to make a quick mention. Obviously, we saw Ripon make a few mistakes in the sprint race. I think he's probably my favourite to win this event or win the feature race if he can keep it clean and avoid any trouble this time, Luke.
I would agree on that. And as our co-founder, one of our commentators would also say, the drivers have had the sprint race, had the qualifying, they've got their eye in now. They're going to have an eye on the strategy. So all the drivers that were making mistakes in the first one, like unfortunately as we saw Rip into Terran, we saw Sarah make a couple and Haslett, which I think most of the grid would have been wanting to at least go towards minimise any mistakes that they did make in the sprint. But that's the point. The more you race, the more laps you put down, the better you get. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on Ziggy actually, but I think we're in for a good race here. 36 laps of Monza, grid start, here we go.
Here we are lining up for our feature race tonight. We have obviously Max Velocity leading us away as Rip and Terran gets a very poor start offline, already losing a place to deadline off the start. Max Velocity is going to have to defend from deadline heading into turn 1. Deadline, absolutely fantastic start from him. He is clear as we break towards turn 1. Max Velocity to hold it around the outside, leads to the inside onto the exit of turn 2. Deadline with a much better exit takes the lead of this race, with Max Velocity losing the position off the start to P2, as well as Ripping the Terror losing a spot to Deadline, as we have our top 3 running up towards turn 2. I'm not sure quite as what happened further behind, as the field looks very, very spread out. As you see, maybe a little bit of contact there between Max Velocity and Deadline. Deadline holding the lead of this race, surviving the challenge from Max Velocity heading in towards the second chicane. Joker up in P4 with Sarah in 5th, Ziggy in P6, possibly losing a few places. Might believe Ziggy there, Luke. Have you saw in the back, Luke?
Yeah, I can tell you what happened earlier into the first corner. Lee and Chris Douglas came together. Unfortunately, it looks like Chris Douglas might have missed his braking point. Ended up sideways down into turn 1 and collected Lee. Lee with big damage, so that's going to be unfortunate. But this is Monza. This is what happens here. So, yeah, lots going on at the front, as you've quite rightly said. Deadline, Max Velocity, Rip and Terran, Joker, all together. And then Sarah Hawkey and Ziggy as well, R2 admin in this event. Obviously, we have Bertie as well, but he is currently in P9. So, well, first lap heading to a close. Looks like we've got another 35 laps after this of a lot of intense drama.
Hopefully we see overtakes throughout this entire race. As we see Deadline, we've seen our top 3 getting very aggressive in trying to break that slipstream. Hopefully not having dirty tyres heading in towards heading into the first corner, because that could cause chaos on the exit.
Ziggy making a dive down to the first corner, into P5 on Sarah. Both side by side.
Like Ziggy might have...
Yep, Ziggy making it stick around the inside of turn 1, the outside of turn 2. But those two drivers showing each other a lot of respect. Ziggy making the move.
It looked like Zara may even touch the sausage curb on the exit of turn 2, which upset the rear of the car, which really affected the traction. The exit of the corner, which really didn't allow her to challenge Ziggy up into the next, up into the chicane. As we see up at the front, Max Velocity past Deadline and now aggressively swooping over to the right to prevent Deadline from lunging him into the first Lesmo. And Deadline get a better exit than Max Velocity on the run down to Ascari to be able to challenge, which he does. He pulls to the outside. Max Velocity going very aggressive on the defense, giving Deadline just enough room, and Deadline possibly outbrake him heading into Ascari. We can't, as Max Velocity holds the lead for now. Maybe a little bit of contact there as Deadline gave Max Velocity just a little bit of a touch there, but Max Velocity defends for the moment, Luke.
Yeah, these 4 absolutely stuck together. I have spotted that Ziggy has dropped off from P5, so he's got in front of Sarah. Then I believe he's had a spin somewhere around Lesmo 1 or the second chicane, so he is dropped back to P9 after making that move. That's unfortunate for him, but yes, these 4 out front, Max Velocity and Deadline, really cutting the course down the main straight, and Max Rossi going defensive down to turn 1, Kurt.
Absolutely, Max Velocity being very aggressive in trying to break the tower. As we see Deadline make a very audacious lunge into turn 1 as he makes that move stick. Can he park it on the apex to prevent Max Velocity being able to challenge him into second chicane line, getting a very good exit off the second corner? Like he managed to build himself a little bit of a buffer to run into the second chicane. As we go around the curve of the Grande, can Max Velocity close that gap? Not quite. It looks like our top 4 are still going to be in a little bit of a train, Luke.
Yeah, they're going to all have to start playing this a little bit smarter. And at the moment, we can see they've got absolutely raw pace, but because they're all squabbling over P1, P2, P3, P4, they're not getting away from the rest of the pack. All they're going to be doing is using up their tyres, using up their fuel. And you've got Sarah Hawkey there, sitting in P5, quite contently, just getting around the course, saving fuel, saving tyres. So that will play dividends later on. These 4 at the front are definitely going to be pushing their luck and their tyres as far as I'm concerned, Kurt. But at the moment, Deadline finally setting a purple sector in the second sector and looking like he's trying to make a break for it.
Absolutely, that gap is already opening out ever so slightly at the front there. Obviously, as you mentioned, Sarah Hawkey ready to pick up any scraps if front 4 get into any drama at the front. Now it looks like Max Velocity could possibly be coming under attack from Ripon de Terrain into the first corner. Although Ripon de Terrain lunged in on the apex of Ascari, which cost him on his exit. It certainly seems like Ripon de Terrain is a lot closer to Max Velocity than Max Velocity is to Deadline, Luke.
Absolutely. I don't know about you. I don't like cutting that little bit of track there. It's so dirty. You really do risk covering your tyres in dirt and just skittering off at the first corner. But they're all seeming to want to do it to try and maximise the slipstream on each other. And at the moment, Ripon de Terrain definitely has, as you said, he's closer to Max than Max is to Deadline. Ripon might be going for the move. Down to the second chicane. Max Velocity chooses not to defend heavily, but Ripon de Terrain thinking better of it. He knew he'd have to go narrow into that corner, and that really can cause incident. So Ripon de Terrain backing off of this one, choosing to fight another day. That's a fairly smart move from Ripon there.
Yeah, obviously Max Velocity not getting the greatest exit off turn 2, which really left him vulnerable with a run up into the second chicane. It looks like now Deadline possibly has broken this out of the slipstream range for Max Velocity. Max Velocity is going to have to use some of that aggressive defending that we saw within the sprint race to probably hold that second position now. It's also interesting to note Joker in P4 is currently really maximising the use of this slipstream, as he has got the most fuel out of our top 4 runners, Luke.
He's also on that medium tyre, which means he's doing a fantastic job of holding onto the back of these soft tyre runners. Again, you have to start this feature race on the tyre that you set your fastest lap on. So starting the tyres he did was an exceptional qualifying lap for him. And he's also going to get that slower medium tyre out of the way. And as we saw with the red lobby, most of the mileage in this track was done on the soft tyre. So keep an eye on Joker for later on.
Absolutely, certainly.
Deadline wide. Sorry, Deadline wide out of turn 2. Got away with it though.
And he certainly don't want to be doing that much more in this race, otherwise he can certainly see himself a victim to the drivers behind him. It's like that gap has stabilised a bit between Max Velocity and Ripon de Terrain. But I want to go back to what you said earlier about Joker being on the medium tyre, possibly being the best suited for further on in this race, which I believe is absolutely true, Luke. The other drivers are going to have to use the medium tyre with Joker getting out of the way first. As long as he can keep touch with front 3, I think he might be in the best position to win this race.
Quite right. I think it's now worth talking about, Kirk, 'cause now it's settling down a little bit. What do you think is the best position to be in this race? I mean, I'm going to say mine straight off the bat and see if you agree with me or not. I think being P3 or P4 is the best position because you get the helping of the slipstream. You get to save a bit of fuel, you get to see what the other guys are doing, and you get to hang back and pick up any pieces. There's Deadline out front, as you can now see, he's fallen back to the clutches of max velocity. He's going to be giving all the other drivers chance to slipstream, save their fuel, and make life difficult on himself if he can't get away. What do you feel?
I agree with you. If we just compare fuel usage between the top four, Deadline, obviously being the lead driver, is been the driver who's forced to cut through the air, therefore using the most fuel. It looks like Joker's got almost a third of a tank saved compared to a Deadline, as being in the slipstream, being able to drop the fuel mixture and maybe lift and coast into a few more corners. It's almost like watching a Formula E race, except we've got engines, Luke.
Yeah, well, that's it's an IQ 300 move. You just got to think your way around this one. Which is what we were talking about in the predictions. I genuinely feel the drivers that think their way around the fuel issues, change up a few hundred revs earlier, sit in slipstream when they know they can't pull away from the driver in front of them, then have shorter pit stops, then have better tyre life, and then can just make their own race happen. You make your own luck happen in this place, don't you? But as you see, not all drivers listen to that. They go for it. Ripping the turn up to P2.
It looks like possibly a little bit of contact there between Deadline and max velocity into the second Lesmo. Maybe max velocity being caught out ever so slightly by Deadline's braking, and that compromised his exit down the back straight, which allowed Ripping the Terran to sneak past. But as we see on the run down to Bolliker, it looks like max velocity's got a much better run out of a sky. He looks towards the inside of Ripping the Terran. Can he outbrake him in towards the final corner? Yes, he can, but this puts him into the side of Deadline, maybe outbraking himself just a little bit, but he makes the most of it by taking the lead of the race, Luke.
Well, it's an unorthodox move, but it definitely works. I mean, that might be one for the stewards later on. But at the moment, these four still getting away. They're managing to keep the pace up despite fighting, which is quite impressive. But 3 down to turn 1, Kurt. 3, do not go into there.
Absolutely not. We see max velocity breaking the latest out of everyone, but with a drive with Deadline and Ripping Terran alongside, he could not turn into the corner. And we see our big loser here being Ripping the Terran, obviously being forced out on the exit of turn 2 by Deadline. You said, Luke, 3 into 1 doesn't quite fit, especially for a corner where realistically there is only one line through it.
It doesn't mean we don't try it. I mean, we saw it in Formula 1 with Max Verstappen and Hamilton. It's very hard to get 2 cars around there, as you quite rightly pointed out. But 3, there was always someone going to come off in tears, and this time it was Ripping the Terran, who hasn't fallen back far. He's only a couple of seconds behind, but again, I think this is more good news for Joker. The longer he sticks on the back of these soft runners, saving fuel, the better for him. I mean, we know that 458, it shreds rear tyres, and at the moment, it's just allowing him to do his own race. This is great news for Joker.
Absolutely. And still compared to Deadline, he has got about 10 and 12% more fuel than Deadline, so he's still the same. Take full advantage of the slipstream, allowing him to save fuel. Which for instance we saw earlier in the lap, it has dropped the Terran out of slipstream range, which obviously isn't going to do his race any favours, or his hopes of winning the race any favours. And looking down the pack, it seems like everybody else, apart from our top 3, have got their own little healthy gaps and just running by themselves, Luke.
Yeah, and then Deadline taking that unorthodox route, just basically covering his tyres in dirt down to turn 1. But it's going to be, can they stop into this first corner? This is an ongoing battle between these two, but they're showing each other respect. But again, 2 into this corner is going to be tricky. Max thinks better of it, cuts back to the outside, thinks about cutting back. He will get the better drive. This is going to carry on down to the next chicane, Kirk. Good racing between these two.
Yeah. As we see max velocity tuck it in behind the Mercedes of a Deadline. Can he possibly make a move heading in towards second chicane? He's closing. He looks to the inside, but Deadline just breaks that little bit later than him and holds the position for now. And I'm just thinking, the more they fight, the more they bring the likes of Joker and Ripping the Terran back towards this front battle, Luke.
Yeah, and obviously I'm keeping an eye on it as well. Ripping to Terran, heading back. Sarah looking to pick up places as well. But Haslett, Saber Venom, and Ziggy, I think they're starting to close in a little bit. It's, at the end of the day, all this fighting out front is losing them time. We saw Ripping to Terran did a 1 minute 53 the last lap. Joker 51, Max Lossie a 51, and Deadline basically a 51 as well. The pack behind them are going quicker now. These guys are squabbling over all the places.
It's not going to do their races any favour, and it's certainly going to bring the people further back into contention of this race. We saw the drama early on, causing the entire pack to maybe spread out
Next
just
race,
a little bit.
Daytona Road Course.
If they want to keep fighting like this, it's certainly going to bring it back to be anybody's race.
Yeah, and here comes Ziggy. He's making his way back up. I think he fell to P10. He's now back up to P7, challenging for P6. But he's on those soft tyres against Haslett's medium tyres, so he has the grip advantage. But again, will we see an IQ 300 move sit in the slipstream for a little while? Or are we going to go for it? I think so far in this blue lobby, we've seen, I'm not going to say non-IQ 300 moves, but everyone's just been going for it, which is entertaining in itself. It's something to be enjoyed.
Another battle for the lead between Deadline and Max Velocity. Again, a little bit argy-bargy into turn 1 and 2 with a little bit of contact. Deadline again still being able. Oh, and it's been contact. Max Velocity's run into the back of Deadline, hit Deadline a little bit out of line for the second part of the chicane. Deadline now defending into the first Lesmo. Max Velocity trying to hold the momentum around the outside. Deadline holding it on for now. That's going to put him under pressure. Maybe as we see Max Velocity pull out just a little bit into the second Lesmo, put Deadline off just a little bit. But it looks like Deadline holds on for now, even after that little bit of contact at the second chicane loop.
Yeah, and these four are still going at it, but they're going to be providing their own highlight reel at this point. But Ripping Deterrent has caught back up after a couple of laps ago, being ran wide at turn 2 out of that first chicane. So hopefully we can settle down, catch our breath for a little bit. Woo!
Again, it looks like almost another bit of contact in Ascari there. As it looks like Max Velocity maybe almost outbroke himself. He almost ran into the back of the Deadline for the second time in one lap. Again, it was like, but that slight mistake from Max Velocity allowed Deadline to get a little bit of breathing room. So it certainly seems like this could be a battle for the entire race loop.
I think you're exactly right. Ziggy has got past Haslett, so our move's heading off all the way around, but I think the action's with the top 4 at the moment, and yeah, lots to happen, lots to go on, and still another 26 laps to go.
It looked like Joker maybe got himself a little out of whack before he put in the first 2 corners. He's now dropped a bit of time to Max Velocity and Deadline in first and second. Maybe feeling a little bit of pressure from Ripping the Terran behind. Certainly seems like maybe not for our top 4, but the rest of the field has kind of killed out just a little bit. We see Ziggy making a slight mistake there, not the most optimum line through the second chicane. Unfortunately, it looks like Saber Venom or Haslett hasn't quite managed to keep up with Ziggy on those medium tyres, and he's also unfortunately picked himself up a half-second penalty for a corner cut somewhere. Other than that, it seems like he and Chris Douglas haven't quite had the greatest races so far. Obviously, towards the back of the pack. It's to be interesting to see if they can bring it back maybe later on in this race, but certainly probably not the start they would be looking at to begin with. And it looks like we may have lost a driver, which may be Steve.
We have indeed.
Stefan.
We have indeed. We've lost Stephen. He has retired from the race. Unknown as to why, but he will not be completing the feature race. So that is 2 down from what we had earlier on. Piper unfortunately didn't take part in qualifying or the feature race, and we have lost Stephen as well. But like you say, Kirk, it's starting to settle down now, but I do think we've got some drivers that will want to be making moves. Ripping to Terran He's still got life in those soft tyres, but he's going to be getting to the end of that rear left tyre. This is the kind of management phase of the feature race, before we start thinking about pit stops, where you want to extend the life of the tyre, get into a pit window. Anything that you would recommend to do? I mean, I know I'd be thinking about moving the brake bias forward to protect the rear tyres, but anything that you could suggest as well?
Probably, I know during my race in the red lobby, I was lifting and coasting when I was in a little bit of a train similar to the top four, what we see in the top four here. I know I was lifting and coasting into corners, giving a little bit of fuel. Although I started on the medium tyre, so I was trying to eke out that medium tyre as long as I could, as well as the fuel, so I could just take on the soft tyre later on in the race, which seen a very similar race plan here. Joker, as you see, ripping the Terran going around the outside of Joker into Ascari. I think the ball for the top four, the ball is definitely in Joker's court later on in the race compared to the drivers around him. He certainly seems to be in the best position in terms of fuel wise. It also doesn't mean count out the likes of Sabre Venom. Sabre Venom also starting on that medium tyre, obviously didn't get a lap time of qualifying due to connectivity issues. With him saving fuel in this first stint, it looks like he'll be going flat out for the next two stints, so it'll be certainly interesting to see if he can catch the drivers in front, such as Ziggy and Sarah, when they have to do their medium tyre stint, Luke.
Completely agree. This is a bit of a weird track, unlike, say, higher deg tracks like Barcelona, where the cars play a much bigger vital difference. Although, I'll come back to that point, because Max Velocity looks like he's making a move, a deadline round the outside of the Curva Grande, down to second chicane. Round the outside, down, now it becomes the inside, and he's already got the position done before they even get to the chicane. But I'm starting to think fuel is going to be an issue for these two. Well, deadline, I think he must be fuel saving, because he must be near coasting around this lap, because that was too easy.
Absolutely, I was just going to say, Fernando Alonso, whoa. Sebastian Vettel, eat your heart out. Max Velocity going straight round the outside. Oh, as we see, Max Velocity getting a very poor exit off Gizmo 2. Maybe don't eat your hearts out quite just yet, Fernando and Sebastian. It seems like they're in a little bit of a ding-dong battle, as Max Velocity he quite easily goes around the outside of deadline there in the end there, so probably deadline is saving just a bit of fuel there, Luke.
Yeah, I think he completely is. Where he's been out front, Max Velocity, he loves to put it on those curves. It keeps biting him, but deadline keeps P2 for the meantime. But yeah, he's definitely struggling with that fuel. He will definitely be in this lap. Max Velocity, I think, can do another one, and I'm pretty sure. Well, Joker runs wide. That might have been contact. Ripping Deterrent is round.
Yeah, quite sure. I didn't quite see what happened between the two drivers, but yeah, obviously Ripping the Terran coming out the worst from that little incident between him and Joker. As we see both all three, Ripping the Terran, Max Velocity, and Deadline. So three of those front four drivers pitting and leaving Joker to take the lead of this race, Luke.
Yeah, and I think Ripping Deterrent chose, since he was coming slow off the Parabolica, chose to take the opportunity to come into the pits with some fresh rubber. Good choice there, and it's about 1/3 distance, so it kind of makes good sense. You've got two equal distance stops there, so good thinking from the drivers there. Mathematically, that makes a lot of sense. But we do have a couple of drivers continuing round. Joker, as we know, on those medium tyres, he will be out of sync compared to the other drivers, and he still has more fuel, and he gets wide coming out of Lesmo 1. We keep seeing Max Velocity do that, and what happens is you then run wide like he's done in Lesmo 2 because of the dirty tyres. They've got to tidy this up for the rest of the race, otherwise they're going to end up in the barrier. Hopefully that's not foreshadowing.
Absolutely.
But P2, Sarah Hawkey. P3, Ziggy, who's making his way back up after that spin early on and catching back up to Sarah. P4, Haslett, Sleeper Venom. Again, on those mediums, and still with a fair chunk of fuel, so I think he's got another lap or two in there. And Bertie doing his tyre whispering things in P5.
mean, it looks like both Joker and Saber Venom or slash Haslett be doing at least 1 or 2 more laps compared to the soft runners in front of Ziggy and Sarah. Certainly seems like the way to go, Luke. Run the mediums deep into this race and then just go flat out on the softs. So it'll also be interesting to see how Bertie can do here. Obviously, Bertie not saving as much fuel as the other 2 medium runners. So be interesting to see where he comes out compared to the likes of your Ziggy and your Sarahs.
Yeah, Sarah and Ziggy are in the pits, as we can see, taking the mandatory pit stop. And yeah, quite right. Yeah, do you take the mediums and go as long into the race as possible? Joker, I think this race is... I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I think it's improbable to do a one-stop around here. He's definitely getting into the area where he's going to make a double stint for softs possible on that 458. But yeah, get those mediums out of the way. I was having a look at our former leaders, Max Velocity and Deadline. Max Velocity gone for the soft tyres again, so he's clearly trying to make a break for it, but he's taken on less fuel than Deadline. Deadline took a full tank and medium, so these two are going to be out of sync, but that might pay off for them in the long run because they're not fighting each other, losing time. So we'll see what happens. Sarah coming out basically side by side with Rip and Deterrent. Sarah full tank of fuel, soft tyres, away she goes. Rip Deterrent on those medium. This is a fight that might carry on for a while.
Yeah, possibly. I think probably this is the right strategy to go for your Deadline. Max fuel on the medium tyre. I find it interesting that Sarah on the soft tyre also took a full tank of fuel. That means when it comes to her final pit stop, I assume she's not doing a few laps on the soft tyre to the end of this race. It looks like she maybe only taking just a little bit of a splash of fuel and fresh tyres towards the end of this race, Luke.
Well, I can tell you now, we run the same car, and we definitely had conversations before this race. So I would suspect she might be running a very similar strategy to some other McLaren drivers, would just put it that way. But ideally, yes, maybe having a little splash and dash at the end, which might be very, very similar to what Max Velocity is doing as well. So you see a lot of McLaren drivers going down the same route round here.
And it'll be interesting. Here we are. We see Max Velocity taking the lead of this race from Joker. Obviously, Joker getting his medium stint out of the way nice and early as his first spin. Is he going to possibly lose the position to Chris Douglas? Not quite. Joker manages to outbrake Chris into the first corner. Easily takes the exit on those fresh soft tyres. The Deadline also makes that move look quite simple in the end. Obviously, those very worn soft tyres aren't doing Chris any favours in that 4GT, Luke.
I was just looking at that. Deadline was barely in the corner and Chris was already coming out of it. I don't know if Chris has got a technical error or something like that, but there's no way that Deadline should have got round the corner and accelerated past him before the Curva Grande. So I don't know if Chris is doing a alternate strategy with a severe low fuel mode or severely struggling with those rear tyres, but that was almost a bit weird. Or perhaps he's just focusing on his race and let the other drivers go so he can maximise his own time and potential. There's more than one way to go about this, isn't there? But one thing we have to report on is Rip and Deterrent was behind Sarah and he's dropped back behind Ziggy. So I think he's had a spin on the last lap somewhere around the Lesmos. So unfortunate for Rip and Deterrent. A couple of incidents in this race, but again, it's a long way to go. Not even halfway as of yet. But looks like the stops are playing out. We still have at least one driver still to pit with Chris Douglas, who should be in this lap.
I just want to say, so on the previous lap, Max Velocity set a 49.2, which is the fastest lap of anyone on the previous lap. obviously those soft tyres for him working quite well at this precise moment of time. So he's also took less fuel than Joker and Deadline behind. As we see Joker just putting putting a little wheel on the gravel, just falling ever so close to Deadline. But as I was saying with Max Velocity, when he pits again for what will be a medium set of tyres, he's going to have to take a lot more fuel than the two drivers behind him.
I think so. I really do. But what is interesting for me, I've got maybe a little bit of a insight. Joker now on the soft tyres seems to be... I don't think his lap times have picked up since he's gone to the soft tyres. Deadline now on the medium, so they've swapped compounds effectively between them. And Deadline is catching Joker, whereas in the first stint, Joker was happily on the back of the top two of Max and Deadline. I think that just shows how much time Max and Deadline were losing fighting out front.
Yeah, I mean, running in clear air is always going to be quicker than battling, and obviously you'd rather be in clear air than battling, being able to focus on your own race and your own pace without the need to be defended from the drivers behind. To be fair, I think the only usual time pack battling is better than running it by yourself is when you can work together with the driver and save a bit of fuel, or maybe bump draft each other down a straight to gain a little bit of time, Luke.
Agreed. One thing to notice, well, here comes Chris Douglas finally in at 16 laps. You think he's out of fuel actually, because that looked like coasting to me. All of the top 8, including Chris Douglas in the pits, are all down the main straight with P9 just coming around Parabolica. So this field, after 16 laps, are still incredibly close together. Ziggy on the back of Sarah now, so that's about a battle that's developing, and Haslett just in front of Sarah. So all these drivers incredibly close together. One mistake and you're going to the back of this pack.
Yeah, I almost can't believe it. No, it just shows you how competitive the field is in this lobby. A simple mistake, as we saw with the likes of Ziggy obviously running up towards the front of the pack, made that mistake, and it's dropped him down to well, as low as 9th. But is he fighting his way back now? Same with Saber Venom. We saw Saber Venom maybe make a few mistakes early on, but is up to P4 at the moment. It certainly looks like he could even challenge the likes of Deadline and Joker towards the end of this race.
I think we're going to see as things carry on. But it does look like Ziggy is shaping up for a move on Sarah down into Ascari. Is he going to get it stopped in time? This is the critical aspect. Sarah sweeps around the outside. He did get the move done. But it's one of those things though. Going down the inside of Ascari is always, I could say, tricky, potentially dangerous. But Ziggy choosing life. He chose Sid the Sloth. I choose life moment. So good racing, good, clear, mature racing from the pair there.
It's sometimes you just got to be a little bit smarter and choose to fight another day. Looks like Ziggy could be getting a nice little bit of a run on Sarah in towards turn 1. Can he close that gap just enough to really challenge? Not quite yet. Sarah breaks a little bit later than him into the first corner, but she has missed the apex of the first corner, but absolutely nailed the second part of it, and got a much better exit, which probably puts Ziggy just maybe a little bit too far back to really challenge it into the second chicanes, I think.
Yeah, quite right. And these two very, very different cars. You've got the MRR of the McLaren, you've got the standard front engine, rear transmission of the Supra, giving these cars very different handling characteristics. As Ziggy perfectly shows us exactly what I was on about, making the Supra very tail happy on occasion, particularly on power. So unfortunate for Ziggy there, dropped a few seconds. Sarah going through Lesmo 2 now. Now Ziggy lost about a second and a half there. Unfortunate, but he'll have the opportunity to catch Sarah again. But out front, Kurt, who would you be your money on for the win, particularly out of these three? Because I think the fight for the win is between these three.
think right now my money is probably on Joker to win. He's obviously carrying a bit more fuel and max velocity, but his tyres looking slightly better condition as well compared to max velocity. Obviously, in a few laps later than max velocities, that's to be expected. But I think just because Max Velocity has to run the medium tyres for his next stint, where can just go straight onto mediums and just keep soft, shall I say, and pushing hard.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing to note is some of the tyre compounds. We saw this particularly at Barcelona. I'm going to highlight Sophia in the blue lobby at Barcelona. She couldn't get on with a soft tyre in the Corvette. It was actually faster on the medium. So some tyre compounds do not suit certain drivers. And I can say for one, I cannot get on with the medium tyre and the Mclaren. So again, it's all personal driving style, personal preference. A lot of drivers still yet to run either the medium tyre or the soft tyre. So there's a lot of variation still to come. But it's good to see that Lee is making his way back through the field a bit. He had to pit the end of lap 1 for front and rear damage after a incident where unfortunately I believe Chris Douglas lost control into turn 1. But we have also lost Haslett. So that is unfortunate. He was running up at the front, I think in P4 with a disconnect. So that is unfortunate for Haslett. But what is one person's pain is another person's personal advantage. So promotion to at very least Sarah, Ziggy, Rippin, Bertie, Lee and Chris Douglas. The field down to 9, but out front Max Velocity and Joker and Deadline still in parabolic altogether.
Absolutely. Even though unfortunately we lost a driver, it certainly seems like the battle for P4 is, as you said, Sarah, Ziggy and Rippin the Terran all within about 8 seconds of each other, and that's the same with the top 3. It seems like our top 3 could finish in any which way, as they all seem to be split about by about 10 seconds or so. It certainly seems like even though we're just over halfway in this race, it seems like anyone could almost finish anywhere in this race.
I would completely agree. I do want to take the opportunity to give Haslett a bit of a positive moment in this one. Unfortunately, he's been disconnected, but he always gives us good drives, good solid drives, lack of problems. I mean, he's a very good driver, solid driver, without repeating myself too many times. And goes under the radar a few races here and there, but gets decent positions, and unfortunately is robbed of it today with that disconnect. So hopefully he can look forward to the next race, which is scheduled to be Dragon Trail, but with the upcoming Euros maybe rescheduled, and we might be looking at Daytona before we can see these drivers again. But here we are at Monza, and Ziggy closing in on Sarah Hawkey again.
Yeah, I'm sure Sarah is almost feeling Ziggy behind her at this point. Ziggy obviously been following Sarah for quite a few laps now, obviously closing in before the pit stops, and now really closing that gap almost within a second now. So possibly looking to overtake, possibly challenge Sarah into the coming few laps. Looking down the field, it looks like Bertie's still trying to close Rippin the Terran, down Rippin the Terran. And otherwise that, it seems like everyone's running at their own pace at Luke.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has settled down a bit. Bertie again has gone under the radar for this one. He's up to P7. He had a bit of a lonely sprint, a bit of damage early on, but feature races do tend to suit his driving style a lot better. He's very, very good at sleeving tyres and fuel. But this being the Temple of Speed, it's very difficult to save fuel and be quick, so it doesn't always lead. This track is a bit tricky with some people's driving styles, but Bertie adapting quite nicely and then getting on the back of Rippin to Terran. But one thing is good to see. One thing that's good to see, I can definitely see that Sarah has improved on her consistency. So we'd noted in some of the earlier rounds, and that consistency has kept her ahead of Ziggy, who you can see has been quick, but just to prove my point, comes almost sideways at Lesmo 2 and loses time.
Yeah, she said, as you said, it's consistency that really matters. When we saw in the sprint race, even though she made a few mistakes here and there was nothing major. It was only minor stuff, which saw her finish P4. And of course, we're looking at another P4 finish here today, or here in the feature race, if she can keep it clean.
I think you're right. I think you're very, very right there. I mean, and if there's anything that goes wrong with either, God forbid, technical issues and or spins, particularly here, or damage and whatnot, podium could easily be on the cards. That consistency is rewarded.
Especially when we expect our front three to maybe battle a bit more coming towards the end of this race. And Sarah is still within touching distance of the front three, maybe about 15 seconds or so behind them. And that's only one big incident away from our front three, and that puts her right back into contention for a podium finish. Her or Ziggy for a podium finish. It looks like Ziggy is closing that gap down to Sarah. It looks like he's about ready to strike at any moment.
Yeah, all within that pit window for Sarah and Ziggy. Let's be fair to Ziggy as well. He's right there. I mean, he's definitely got that speed, but it does seem to be that every time he gets his nose under the back, particularly at McLaren, maybe it's the wake off the back of McLaren, that Supra does become very, very unsettled. As
we see Ziggy going round in the exit of Lesmo 2. It's obviously something you never like to see, but obviously Ziggy just pushing his luck just that one too many times. Obviously, unfortunately picking up damage or severe damage to the front right of the Supra.
Yeah.
Obviously that's probably if he pits now, he's probably gonna have to take mediums to the end of the race comfortably.
Yeah, he might be able to finish the race with a long stint, as long as he's careful on his fuel. But I'd like to say I called that. But unfortunate for Ziggy, hopefully he'll see the funny side in that one. But he's still doing well. He's in P5, but he's still going to get a good haul of points, but he's going to have to adapt that strategy. Like you say, Kirk, if you go mediums to the end now, I think he still has to use those medium tyres, fix the damage, full fuel tank, and then go to the end as he comes in the pits.
As we move, I try to go on board for that battle for P6. It looks like Bertie has certainly closed that gap very much so to ripping the terrain. I'm not sure if he's going to be quite close enough to really challenge heading into towards the first corner. But he's certainly going to have ripping the terrain looking in his rear view mirrors to see if Bertie might make a lunge here or there.
Yep, and at the moment we've just seen Lee promoted into 7th, so he's making a good recovery. He's showing well, and he's recently set a personal best of 48.8. So it's only 2 tenths off Joker out front. So Lee definitely showing good pace around here in that 911 as well. There's good to see in every single driver around here, and unfortunately with a couple of retirements and or technical losses, points can be had. And unfortunately points have been lost by a few drivers. Unfortunate, but there's always next race.
Absolutely. I said Dragon Trail next week. Oh well, maybe postponed just a little bit because of the ball.
Let's face it, we didn't expect England to get that far, did we?
Not at all. Not after the performances put in earlier on in the Euros. But it looks like possibly a slight mistake there from ripping the terrain, allowing Bertie to just close up just that ever so slightly bit more. It looks like Bertie hasn't quite managed to take full advantage of it, as it looks like he may have gone slightly deep into Ascari, which really messed up his exit.
I don't know about you, Kirk.
It's totally interesting.
Right, you carry on.
Yeah.
I was just going to suggest, if I was Bertie, there's a big gap between Rippin and Sarah. I would almost sit behind Rippin to Terra and just save fuel. Play the long game.
guess that could be a ways to go. Obviously, the more fuel he saves now, the less he has to put in during his pit stop. Um, I just what I was going to say is it's also interesting to see different lines some drivers take. As I saw Ripping the Terran obviously taking a tight apex on the final corner of Parabolica, allowing him to get onto the power a little bit earlier than Bertie, who chose to take a long sweeping line around and almost used the camber of the outside of the circuit to carry that momentum round, Luke.
Yeah, different lines are definitely being used. I think you've highlighted beautifully there. It does highlight driving style, and a lot of Formula One driving lines now have adapted in previous years to square off corners, to make the apex speed a bit lower, but at the end of the day, it will make your corner exit speed a lot faster. So it looks like some drivers trying some different lines, and as we see, Max trying a different line, which goes into the pits. Joker picks the lead up again.
Pit lane line. Yeah,
it's a novelty line, but it does work.
This is a crucial point of the race for Joker. Joker is now going to have to put his head down and just go as fast as he can. It'll be interesting to compare lap times after max velocity's been out for a few laps to see how he compares to Joker. Even going on at what we almost expect now is almost certainly going to be his final medium stint to the end of this race. Also promotes Sarah up to P2 as Deadline comes in as well. Again, it'll be interesting to see where Deadline comes out compared to Max Velocity. Obviously, they're doing the inverse strategy compared to each other with Deadline doing the medium tyre as the middle stint, with Max Velocity doing the medium tyre as the end stint, Luke.
Yeah, Max going to mediums.
Max Velocity.
Deadline coming out now with a full tank. Going
also
to
on soft tyres.
But he spent so much longer in the pits. I think Deadline is over-fueled.
Yeah, me too. I certainly wasn't expecting Deadline to take a full tank of fuel, and that could possibly cost him even to Sarah, Luke.
That's entirely possible. We know the AMG can be a little bit thirsty, but if you shift it in the right place, you can get into a very similar area as the McLaren. So that is an interesting strategic choice. Maybe a blunder from Deadline, but we'll find out as things unfold. Yeah, I didn't expect that from Deadline. But one thing I can say, as I will verify for my own driving and testing around here, the medium tyres, for me, did not work on that McLaren. It was like driving on ice. So we're going to see what Max Velocity's pace is. Maybe it won't affect him as badly as other drivers.
I should say, I was going to say when I was in the BMW M6 around here, I actually quite enjoyed medium tyre. I know I did a lot of my practice on the medium tyre, not the soft tyre, and I actually quite enjoyed the medium tyre compared to the soft loop.
Interesting. Good insight there, Kirk. But again, I think that comes down to driving styles and to different manufacturers as well. As Bertie looks like he's getting a bit of a shifty on. Looks like he's going for a move on the outside of Ripping to Terran down the main straight. These two actually having a big fight now. Looks like Bertie is going to be trying for the move down into turn one. Take it away, Kirk.
As we head towards the braking zone, we brake just after the 150 metre board. Bertie managing to make that move stick around the outside of Ripping the Terran. Can Bertie get a much better exit on the exit of turn two? It looks like on the exit, Bertie takes the advantage, but Ripping the Terran is going to have the slipstream running up into the second chicane. He doesn't seem to be closing. Maybe he's saving just a little bit of fuel, Luke.
It's possible, but this is a long lap round here in terms of mileage. Lots of slipstreaming, and Ripping Terran is still there. If anything, he's closer, but we've already seen him go for a couple of moves and think better of it. So maybe he's choosing his moment.
I just want to say earlier on in that previous lap, we saw Lee put the inside into Lesmo 1 on Chris. It certainly seems like it's maybe not been the greatest days for either Lee or Chris, as they have been running around the back of the pack today. Yeah, as you say, Joker in. It'll be interesting to see how much fuel he takes and where he comes out to the likes of a Max Velocity. Obviously, we see Max Velocity maybe make a little bit of a blunder with the strategy, picking up or taking a full tank of fuel. So we see Rip and Terran has now got past Bertie again, as Bertie picked up a half-second penalty somewhere around that lap.
Sarah in as well.
Sarah is in as well.
Yeah, we got Sarah
It'd
in.
be interesting to see where Sarah comes out compared to Deadline and Ziggy. Those two drivers obviously saw Ziggy make a mistake before his pit stop, which dropped him a bit behind Sarah, and Deadline only just come out in front of Ziggy. As you see Joker coming out side by side with Bertie heading towards the first corner. This is maybe a little bit important for Joker's race to maybe not get held up by Bertie on those old soft tyres too long, as Joker goes quite simply around the outside of Bertie. Those fresh softs obviously giving him a much exit. As you see Bertie getting up behind Joker again in the slipstream on the run up to turn 2. Is Bertie going to possibly make a move here? No, he is not. He's going to lift off and just behind for now, Luke.
Yeah, I think he's going to choose the sensible thing to do. He knows those tyres are way older than Joker's, and Bertie's just going to try and maximise his own race, which he knows realistically is not against Joker, it's against Rip and Terran. So all he has to do is circulate for another lap, take on less fuel, more importantly, than Rip and Terran, who was just pitted, and then try and jump in with the overcut. But at the moment, Max Velocity is running that P3 net P2 behind Joker, and Joker on the soft tyres. So this is looking more sewed up for Joker at the moment. And Deadline, he has the softer tyre, but he has lost a lot of time taking on that extra fuel.
I just touch wood here for a second. It certainly seems like Joker is out in the primary place to win this race. As I said earlier on, it looks like Joker may be the driver who is in the best position. Obviously, taking those medium tyres first and sticking in the slipstream of the battling drivers of Max Velocity, Deadline, and Rip and the Terran is really paid dividends for Joker here.
I would completely agree. It looks like he's had the IQ 300 strategy in this one, and it's worked out nicely for him. As Bertie comes in for his final stop, and let's have a look around to see what's going on with the rest of the field at the moment, because I feel Bertie's gonna. Oh, Ziggy having another. There we go. We said he was the fastest Gardner in the world. He's proven his worth. Unfortunate moment to go to Ziggy on that one, but he's still going to pick up a good handful of points in P7. We'll have a look, see if we've got any fights coming around. I think Bertie and Rip and Terran should be coming out close to each other. Yes, they are.
Yeah, it's like Rip and Terran is comfortably in front for now. It looks like Bertie might have a little bit of work for him to be able to close that gap up to Rip and Terran. Sarah running quite nicely in P4 at the moment. Joker, Max Velocity, and Deadline as our top 3 with about laps to go. It seems like everybody's quite spaced out now, Luke.
Yeah, it definitely appears so. Looks like it's all settled down now, for at least the meantime. Joker P1, Max Velocity P2, Deadline P3. Do you want to go through the rest of the field?
Yeah, we have Sarah driving a very, very solid, if not maybe a little bit quiet race in 4. Rip and the Terran are a big loser here. Obviously, we saw in the first one him fighting towards the front of this. Well, we did see him fighting at the front here with Joker, Max Velocity, and Deadline, but a few mistakes getting in there. Getting into his race and dropping him what looks like probably a good 25-30 seconds behind the leader. Probably a good probably even more than that. It looks like it's probably about 30 seconds behind Deadline, and maybe even 40 to 50 seconds behind Joker, Luke.
It happens.
P6 we have Bertie. Again, a remarkable, but if not, maybe a slightly quiet race from Bertie in P6. Ziggy in P7, obviously one or two major spins and incidents, which probably cost him being up with Sarah. Obviously, we saw before the pit stops, final round of pit stops, him right up there with Sarah. But now again, it looks like he's probably about 25 to 30 seconds behind Sarah. And with Lee and Chris Douglas running out in 8th and 9th, obviously not been the greatest days either of those drivers.
No, I would agree, but I do think there is a silver lining in there. Chris Douglas is driving a 4GT, which is somewhat of a difficult car, but he's making it work. He's definitely shown at other races, I think it was around Red Bull Ring, he has a turn of speed. Not every track will lend itself to going long, particularly like Monza with like the fuel strategy, but he is keeping pace with other drivers around him despite doing a unique strategy, so he's doing himself proud. Again, Lee having a big recovery after the first lap incident, but have to say his speed is only 2/10 off Joker, who is in P1, so he will take a lot away from that, and at very worst he will be starting towards the front in the sprint race next time out at the next race, so he will have a good chance at a very good sprint race result, and then he's just got to work on his qualifying and get up into the top 2 rows, and then hopefully avoid incidents in the next race.
Absolutely. Obviously, we starting lap. Our leaders starting lap 30 now. What do you expect to see for the rest of this race?
I would hope they all settle down and just focus on what they have to do. And unfortunately, when you're in the car, it then becomes a more of a issue with yourself. Unfortunately, I wish we had Sarah in the commentary so she could talk about the psychology of the drivers. But it becomes a self-discipline exercise. Some might say boring, but it really isn't. You just have to keep that concentration going, and we can very quickly it can go sour, particularly around here, as we would have seen in the red lobby. Things can go wrong very quickly, even for the top drivers. So it's something we know all too well, Kirk, isn't it? This track bites, and when it goes wrong quick, no matter who you are or where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably people are spread out now quite a lot. This is where a lapse in concentration probably hurts you the most. I know. Maybe I couldn't say so much after what happened to me in my race where I lost it.
You Hamiltoned it.
I lost concentration.
Let's be fair, it was a Hamilton moment, wasn't it? And breaking news, we have lost Deadline. He has had a disconnect from P3. That is massively unfortunate.
But it also benefits Sarah, well, everybody, as they all move up a position. Sarah moving up into P3 and Terry into P4 and Bertie into P5.
That is unfortunate for Deadline. He was looking set for a massive haul of points in his first event this season.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes this happens. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to the next round at Dragon Trail, whenever that may be. I was saying, right here, a lapse in judgment can bite you quite badly. Obviously, I was running up in P9, battling for P8 and P7 on the final lap, and then I just went a little bit wide on Lesmo 1 and just dropped it into the barrier, and it ended up costing me quite severely in the end. Running around that half lap with severe damage and engine damage cost me 2 positions, though.
It does happen. And as we saw from Koulios in the red lobby, he also had issues with the track. Again, as we said, this track bites. It doesn't suit everyone, and when it bites hard. But one thing I would like to bring your attention to, Kirk, Ripon Deterran just went purple in the first sector, not quite purple in the second, but he's still on for a personal best, and his PB is only 5 or so hundredths off the fastest lap of the race. And at the moment, on those soft tyres, that Ford GT is going well. And at the other end of that straight, in the Parabolica, is Sarah Hawkey on the mediums on the McLaren. Unfortunately, runs wide, so she's definitely going to be worried about the pace of Ripon de Terren. Last lap, 1:48.6. Let's see what he does over the line, Kirk.
It certainly seems like they're going all out trying to get that bonus point for the two bonus points for the fastest lap. I mean, we saw it towards the end of the last season. Every extra point counts, especially in a tight battle. Because I think we had 3 or 4 drivers with it battling for the podium positions in the championship last season. So you never know where them extra 2 points could count, Luke.
Exactly. And one thing to notice is I was looking at the lap times again. Sarah's, although consistent lapping, 51.7, is somewhat 2.5-ish seconds slower than Ripon de Terren. So he's gained 5 seconds in the last 2.5 laps. So that is a battle that will be developing with only 4 laps to go.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see. Although that gap looks like it could be about 7 or 8 seconds if he's catching by that margin.
Well, that might be a final lap pass. There might be a final lap battle there, Kurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Never say it's over until you cross the finish line, because it certainly seems like anything could happen.
Right. Shall we have a quick talk about not what could have been, but all the things that we have seen with all the drivers. Go from there. So I'll start very quickly. We'll make this quick on each one. Joker, absolutely impressive straight off the bat. Great strategy. Looks like a solid P1.
Yeah, absolutely. He's drove a very good race today. Obviously got it perfectly right with the strategy. Hasn't made mistakes like we've seen with a few of the other drivers, and it's certainly been a nice and good drive from today.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Moving on to Max Velocity, definitely shown he's got elbows for days, I feel. But it's definitely settled down in the feature race. I think the stewards will be having a word with him after the sprint race, one way or another. But he's a good addition to the series, and only his 2nd race with Nighthawk Racing.
A man after my own heart. Aggressive in the attack, aggressive in the defense. Maybe not be to everybody's taste. He maybe not to everybody's taste, but certainly like it. He certainly puts a smile on my face when I see him defend or attack, because it's going to be something pretty impressive.
I'd love to see you two race each other then. We'll look forward to that, shall we? All right.
You never know, we might see it at some point this season.
I think so. It's entirely possible. So next one, on to Sarah Hawkey, one of the Nighthawk Racing co-founders, running P3, doing exactly what she should do. It's not a remarkable race in terms of outright pace, but that consistency is exactly what gets you the results. And she's doing well. She's actually picking up the pace now that Ripon de Terren's heading her way. A very, very positive race for Sarah, particularly after spending quite a bit of time away from GT7.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw in the sprint race maybe 1 or 2 mistakes where she outbroke herself just a little bit, but it's been a very remarkable drive. Maybe not giving her much credit, as I've said that, she's gone deep into the first corner. Well, that's obviously not going to help her.
Jinx.
She tries to run away from a Ripon de Terren.
Yeah, that's when the pressure's on. It's easy to outbreak yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, or you go a little bit wide into the wall.
Yeah. Right. On to the next one quickly, Kurt. We've only got a lap or 2 to do for this. Ripon de Terren, great race, but sideways out of the second chicane. Definitely hustling that car, that Ford GT, trying to catch up. But it might have been a bit of a story of what could have been if it weren't for a couple of incidents.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see him on the grass there, and of course Lesmo too, obviously playing a very risky game as he's trying to close up to Sarah.
Yeah,
I agree. A story of what could have been. Saw a few mistakes. I think if he can work on that for next round, there's no reason why he couldn't be challenging for a win next time out.
I completely agreed. And good strategic use this race. Again, what could have been, but P4, nothing to be sniffed at. Big Crazy Bertie, one of our admin and hosts for this one in that Aston Martin. Looks good in that 007 livery. Again, it's done very, very well. Pulled a bit of a unique strategy, done well. And just to cycle through it very, very quickly, Kirk, we'll come back to you on this one. Ziggy, also a little bit of a what could have been as he sets what might be the fastest lap of the race coming round through Sector 2. We'll keep an eye on that in a moment, see if he goes fastest lap. But again, what could have been if it wasn't for a couple of trips through the gravel. Lee, again, I think it's a very, very good recovery from the gent, and he's been making his way back up, and he has had the pace. Chris Douglas gaining experience, and an absolute pleasure to have him on the grid. So hopefully he'll have a good race out next time as he goes a lap down from Joker. So sorry to hustle through those, Kirk. Feel free to give us your points of view. I just wanted to make sure we had Sarah and Ripper battle, which is heating up a little bit now, on camera and ready for the final lap.
Absolutely. So as I was saying with Ziggy, I think it definitely is a story of what could have been. Obviously, we saw him earlier in the race, and being very close to Sarah and possibly threatening an overtake. I think his outright pace, barring mistakes, has been very good. Barring the mistakes, I don't think there's any reason why he couldn't have finished on the podium. Just getting on top of those slight mistakes. He's called the grass cutter for a reason.
The high-speed gardener, or Valtteri Ziggy, as I sometimes call him. Ziggy is James, as if you know your Formula 1, you know what that means. But Joker, on to the final lap, lap 36. I think he's been very impressive. It's a late addition to the grid. If anyone is interested in joining us, feel free to follow our link tree and come and chat with us. We'll see if we can get you added to the grid. We only ask you to be friendly and safe on the track. But yeah, Joker, he's been imperious. He's had a great strategy today, and he's fought off the deadline and max velocity for the win, it feels. It looks like Sarah's doing enough to hold off Ripon Deterrent as well. That pace advantage for those soft tyres on the Ford GT has seemed to have waned now. It looks like Sarah's holding the gap a little bit better now.
Yeah, I mean, if we just compare tyre wear, Sarah's tyres look in a much better shape than Ripon Deterrent's on the Ford. Also, looking fuel-wise, the Ripon Terran could be being forced to conserve just a tiny bit of fuel compared to Sarah, where Sarah doesn't have to lift the coast. Maybe we might see the Ripon Terran lifting the coast into a few corners, but that gap looks like it could be just about 2 seconds or just under now.
Yep, we'll keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on that on the second screen for you. But Joker coming around the Parabolica for the final time. That corner's renamed, but it'll always be known as the Parabolica to me. Joker taking the win, take it away, Kurt.
Absolutely, as we see Joker coming out of the final corner to wrap up what has been absolutely fantastic race, getting the strategy to perfection when it comes to fuel saving and tyres. Following that, we have max velocity taking second place. Very good drive from him. Again, although maybe not the greatest sprint race, he certainly made more than amends for it in the feature race, finishing second. As we see Ripon Deterrent looking to go around the outside into Parabolica. Round got on Sarah. Can he make that move stick? Sarah's got the optimum racing line. Oh, gives it a little bit of a touch there to Ripon Deterrent. Ripon Deterrent going into the slipstream. Can he get the slingshot off Sarah? It's close. They're running side by side, but Sarah just manages to hold off Ripon Deterrent on the final lap, and then taking P5, big crazy 30. Quite a quiet race for him in the end there, Luke. And P6 Ziggy, as we said a little bit earlier, a race of what possibly could have been for him. And then our final finisher on the lead lap, we have Lee.
Wow, what an ending from Sarah and Rippin. I wonder if there was an error somewhere in there from Sarah, because she had best part of, like you said, a second and a half, 2 second gap coming around Curva Grande. Maybe a issue in the second chicane or the Lesmos. But, crucially, picking up a podium in the feature race. That is good news for Sarah. And definitely a bit of an ego. Well, Kirk, that feature race, that was lots going on in that one. At least it was a little bit calmer than what we had at the sprint race. But well done all the drivers. It looks like I think it was a relatively clean race and definitely a good strategic show from a lot of drivers. Any particular highlights from you or anything you want to talk about quickly?
I just highlight probably Joker's whole race. He obviously stayed out of the squabbling during the first stint and used that to save tyres and save fuel, and use it to his full advantage later on in the race, meaning he had to take less fuel at the pit stops, and could just focus on using the maximum potential of the soft tyres.
I agree with that. I think this sets us up nicely, and I hope that we see more of Joker in particular. I think we probably will see him in the red lobby at some point, depending on his average point score, which I suspect is going to be pretty damn good following this sprint and this feature race victory. However, I think that does lend us to the talk of a driver of the day. I'm just going to say very, very quickly, shout out to Ziggy, our own admin, for the podium in the sprint race. He did absolutely great there. We saw Deadline and Joker come from the back, and in the feature race we saw Deadline doing well, unfortunately disconnecting, it's an unfortunate hazard of eSports. It does happen. Same with Hassler. I think he could have had a great result today, but again, unfortunately disconnected, and Stephen retired. But with regards to driver of the day, I do want to give a really, really big shout out to Sarah Hawkey, who has definitely worked on her consistency and done well, particularly with a podium in the feature race, and I think the 4th place in the sprint. But I don't know if you're going to agree with me, Kirk, but I think shout out for Sarah, but driver of the day, Joker.
Yeah, absolutely. They're taking quite a bit of advantage of some drivers DNFing to secure that podium finish. Obviously, while finishing on the podium, you're always going to be happy with the performance, no matter how you achieved it. I think I fully agree with you, Luke, when it comes to a big shout out to Sarah to finishing on the podium, but definitely driver of the day goes to Joker.
Yeah, I think so. He's done well. He literally asked to join the series 3 hours before the race, got up to speed with the format, and from what it looks like, he was a very, very solid, but I'm not going to use the word solid, very quick and consistent racer, and one with definitely a thinker as well. He chose the strategy beautifully, and then got that 458, which is not an easy car. We watched in the red lobby. If you see Sophie absolutely pulling drifts around the Parabolica, that car is not easy. So I think you have to give kudos to all of our drivers, but in particular on this one, Joker, for his first race, short notice and great result. But I think that puts us on to thinking about the championship in the calendar. We're going to see a lot of drivers shooting up the order, particularly with great results, double results from Joker and Sarah in particular. Max Lossi he's done well, but I think he's going to have a steward after him for 1 or 2 incidents. And yeah, points are all, good results are all. I'm looking forward to the next one. We don't know at this moment if it's going to be for Dragon Trail Gardens, which is scheduled to be wet, or it will be for Daytona road course. It's looking more like it's going to be Daytona road course due to the fact of the England Euro game. But that said, I think that's going to be an interesting one, and it will shake up the grid again, because that's a very different circuit to Monza, Kirk.
Absolutely. So if it is Dragon Trails Gardens, obviously quite a bit more technical than what we see at Monza. Obviously, there is a bit more about momentum carrying around the first corner, and especially in that middle sector. If we don't go to Dragon Trails Gardens next week, and go straight to Daytona, I'm pretty sure we'll see cars that did well here do pretty similar. Obviously, Daytona, you've got the main part of the track being an oval with high speed chicane, and obviously the infield section, which may favor non-turbocharged cars, thanks to a more linear power band.
I love that technical insight.
What is it? I also but I think if we do go to Dragon Trails Gardens next week and it's wet, I think we will certainly see a lot of thrills and spills from people maybe being a little bit too eager on the throttles.
We have to try and make sure it's none of us. But that said, I think we have to bring this Blue Lobby race to an end. We'll head off to the podium room in a minute to have a chat with any of our drivers who will be sending in some statements for us. It's always good to hear their points of view, and quite frankly, thank you to all of the Nighthawk Racing family, for all of the admin, for yourself, Kirk, and all the drivers who put on a good race today. And quite frankly, I'm looking forward to the next race, whichever one it's going to be. And let's have a good rest of the season. I'm very, very happy with what's gone on so far. Let's give everyone a good show. And if anyone's enjoyed this, please feel free to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Discord. So come say hello to us, come chat with us, and we'll go from there. Thank you all. Kirk, any final thoughts?
I think congratulations to Joker. Congratulations to Max Velocity and Sarah, our podium finishers here today. I think I'm certainly interested to see what the next few rounds can bring. Whether we see the same drivers finishing on the podium, or we see some drivers get promoted into the red lobby, such as Joker. Very interested to see what Joker could do it in the lobby, or whether he be a midfield driver or possibly challenge the likes of Swizzy, Kai, and Mac.
Either way, I think we're going to have to keep our wits about us with Joker in the mix. I'm going to say commiserations to Deadline, unfortunately, on this one, and to Haslett, but at least Deadline has Mac to keep things positive for him, and very, big hearts and big hugs out to those two. Anywho, let's move on to the next race. Kurt, thank you very much. See you all for the next round. Take care, and let's have some good racing coming up.
Wow, what a result! Totally unexpected. Great race, and really enjoyed the battles with Deadline. Not sure what happened to him. The first stop, he gone. And congratulations to Joker. Just way too fast for me today. Ciao.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah Hawkey. I hope everyone enjoyed watching the Blue Lobby commentary this week, and as always, I'm sure they've done a brilliant job and can't wait to watch it back myself. But firstly, just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of the admin and the drivers in the Nighthawk Racing family. It's a pleasure to be part of this amazing team. As you can see, I've swapped the commentary booth for the racing seat this season, and tonight I had a lot of fun driving around Monza in both the sprint and the feature race. And I believe I was in the right time at the right place towards the end of the feature race, especially because, unfortunately, a few drivers did get disconnected from the race. Very similar to George Russell at the Austrian Grand Prix a few weeks ago, some may say. And if you're a Formula 1 fan, you'll know what I mean by that. Happy to get P3, and I think I just need to work on a little bit more of my consistency to try and get more podiums towards the end of the season. And before I go, make sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the Nighthawk Racing YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, anything you can think of, we're on it. And much love from me, and hopefully see you again before the end of the season.
Hello everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed to watch the sprint race for the Blue Lobby. It was definitely a fun race for me. Very happy with P2 on this race, although I had a pretty good chance to win it and screwed it up completely. Anyway, at the race start, everybody just behaved. On T1, I think everyone had a decent conservative approach to that corner, that specific corner. And after that, it was just trying to keep the pace and try to pull away from the guys behind. I've benefited from Max's mistake on the second chicane, and from there I just tried to keep the car on the tarmac as long as possible. But even so, it was not possible, because by the round starting lap number 8, I just did one of the silliest mistakes anyone can do on that specific breaking point, and that's it. That was the race. I knew that once Joker and Deadline managed to pull back up into the podium positions, it would be harder for me to keep the distance, because they are really quick and really strong drivers. But anyway, 3 laps to go, I was ahead by, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds, 4.5 seconds. So the distance was completely under control, and even then, I just totally ruined it. Well, guys, I've enjoyed the race. Really happy with P2 for this sprint. Hope you had a good time watching it, and some laughs from my mistake as well. Cheers. See you next race.